Hi Ian, welcome to your first screencast on the respiration topic. So hopefully you will have in front of you your knowledge organisers and your question sheet for this session. Going through this screencast will hopefully help you answer all of your questions on your sheet. Your success criteria for today is to be able to name the part of the respiratory system, to be able to describe how gas exchange takes place, and to be able to explain the importance of efficient gas exchange. You will need this part of your knowledge organiser to help you along. These are your summary questions that I hope you'll be able to answer by the end of this session. You need to be able to name the large flat muscle found at the base of the lungs that contracts and relaxes as breathing happens. You need to be able to tell us which gas passes from the alveoli in the lungs into the blood capillaries. You need to be able to name and define the process that allows gas exchange to happen in the lungs. And finally, the lungs are adapted to allow the gases to pass easily in and out of the blood. Give 3 ways which tell us how the lungs are adapted for this to happen. So, it's really important that you're able to name and know the functions of the part of the respiratory system. So this is your first task. Now, what I suggest you do is use this diagram to label the part of the respiratory system on your sheet. Now, on your sheet, it's asking you what part A is, what part B is, and so on. Look at this diagram and fill that in. Hopefully you've managed to do that now. And so what we're going to look at now is the function of each of these parts. So the nasal cavity allows you to inhale air along with taking air in through the mouth. The soft palate is some tissue that's found between the nose and the mouth. As we move down, we've got the larynx. Now the larynx or the voice box vibrates to help you to produce the sound when you speak. Moving further down, we have the trachea or the windpipe. We would prefer you to use the word trachea. The trachea finishes in 2 separate tubes, one that goes into each of the left and the right lung. The singular of this is called the bronchus, the plural, the bronchi. So we then go into the lungs, and you can see that these branches branch further and further. The smaller of these branches are known as the bronchioles. We finally then get to these tiny little air sacs called alveoli, and they're really important because that's where most of the gas exchange occurs. Along the bottom of the lungs we have this large flat muscle called the diaphragm, and diaphragm is vitally important in breathing. As it contracts and relaxes, it allows us to inhale and exhale air. We have 2 lungs, one on the left and one on the right. Both lungs contain all of these parts, the bronchus, the bronchioles and the air sacs. We then have the ribs, which are the grey bits, connected by these intercostal muscles. Intercostal just means between the ribs. These muscles allow the rib cage some movement. It allows the ribs to be able to expand and contract, and that helps with breathing also. Learning all these parts and their functions now will help towards your GCSE, as you will look again at these next year. So, when people hear the word breathing, they usually confuse it with respiration. The most important thing on this slide is this: breathing is not the same as respiration. Breathing is when we inhale and exhale air. Respiration is when we use some of the products from the air along with glucose from our digestion to make energy. Do not confuse the two. When we breathe, the diaphragm moves down and flattens, and the ribs are able to move up and out with the help of those intercostal muscles. This increases the volume in the chest cavity, which in turn decreases the pressure, causing air to rush in and fill the lungs. When the diaphragm moves up, the ribs move down and air is forced out. And you can see this in the diagram below. So here, the diaphragm's moving down, the ribs are moving out, and air rushes into the lungs. The opposite happens over here. The diaphragm relaxes, the intercostal muscles relax, and air is forced up and out of the lungs. As this happens, we have a process of gaseous exchange going on. Two gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, are moving around the body. Oxygen is vitally important for respiration, and it needs to get to all the cells in the body. And carbon dioxide is a waste product of respiration, which needs to be removed. In the lungs, the carbon dioxide moves from the body cells into the blood. It travels all the way through the body and until it finds these tiny air sacs called alveoli, where it moves out of the blood into the alveoli, out through the lungs, and eventually out through the mouth. This removal of this carbon dioxide helps keep the body stable. Too much carbon dioxide in the body would cause problems, and so it needs to be removed at a continuous rate. Oxygen moves from the alveoli into the blood and eventually arrives at all the cells in the body. The gases pass in and out of our bloodstream by a process called diffusion. Diffusion is when a substance moves from a high concentration to a lower concentration. And the lungs are really good at doing this job. They're well adapted because they're moist. They have an excellent blood supply with these tiny little capillaries spread out all over the surface of the alveoli. And the alveoli also have a large surface area, which means that maximum diffusion can occur. So, what is respiration then? Respiration is the process that the body uses to release energy from glucose. So what else do we need for this to happen? We get glucose from the digestive system, and we get oxygen from the respiratory system. When respiration happens, we get waste products like carbon dioxide, water, and the thing we need, the energy. These two waste products, carbon dioxide and water, are both removed during exhalation when we breathe out. The energy, or ATP, is used for lots of different processes in the body, such as growth and repair, such as movement. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. You'll look at that in more detail at GCSE. So, where in the cell does respiration occur? Respiration occurs in the mitochondria. These are found in the cytoplasm of the cell. And respiration actually happens in a layer inside the mitochondria and produces lots of energy for us to use. So, here's a type of question that you could get based on this topic. The table shows the composition of blood entering and leaving the lungs. So you've got two different gases, you've got oxygen and you've got carbon dioxide. And these numbers show the concentration of the oxygen in the blood entering the lungs and oxygen leaving the lungs. Again, carbon dioxide in the blood entering the lungs and carbon dioxide in the blood leaving the lungs. And what you need to do for 3 marks is you need to explain what's happening in this table. You need to look at the numbers and you need to use these numbers in your answer. So I'll pause the clip now and have a go at this question. Easy? I hope so. So what you should have done is found the difference between the number of units of oxygen entering the lungs compared with the number leaving the lungs, and that would be 60. So if you said the number of units of oxygen increases by 60, or you've said the difference between the blood entering and leaving the lungs in terms of oxygen is 60, that will get you a mark. If you've said that the concentration of carbon dioxide decreases by 6, that will get you a second mark. So let's take a look of how it appears in the mark scheme then. So 3 marks then. 1 mark for saying oxygen increases. A second mark for using the data, so for 60. If you've said that the oxygen more than doubles, you will get that second mark. Now look at the concentration of carbon dioxide. If you said carbon dioxide decreases, you will get a mark. If you said it decreases from 46 to 40 or by 6 units, you would also get a mark for a maximum of 3. You could also have it decreases by a small amount. But using the data is really important if you can do that, because that shows that you understand what's going on in that table. So by now, hopefully you've been able to work through your sheet and answer those key questions. There's lots of different web links for you to help as well if there's still things that you're not too sure about. Any questions, come and see us or we're at the end of an email. Thanks, Yanine. Bye.